Just onto a new subject, which maybe ties some of this together. I interviewed Brian Kaycock back in 2 episodes ago, 49, I think. And we were talking a little bit about the diving that you and he were doing together and Dan's cave. And I think it was the connection to Ralph's cave you were trying to make. And I think it ties together some of these topics of number one, exploration diving. Number two, when things are tough and things go wrong. But he mentioned the amazing dives you did at the end there to connect Dan and Ralph's cave. And I'll use his words. I'm looking over at a screen because I've got them written here. He said, Steve went through this just ridiculously stupid, mud-filled, clay-filled restriction, and he found my line on the other side. And he alluded that there was a lot more to that story, but he wasn't prepared to tell me, and he told me I had to ask you personally. So can you share that dive that you did to connect the two cave systems together, which was sort of fundamental in the exploration that Brian's doing now?
Sure. I mean, it's a little bit, as you say, it does tie things together because it's a little bit about experience. I would not have gone through that restriction early on in my diving career. I mean, it just would have been horrifying, the idea of actually going through this thing, because I was a long, long way back in a cave, after sort of like several stages to get me to where I'm going. And now I've got to no mount through an extremely small, extremely challenging restriction. I have no idea what's on the other side of it, whether I'm going to be able to turn around, if I'm going to be able to back up. I've got to go down this thing, which is at like a pretty steep angle, so 45-degree angle, head first, basically plowing through clay, thick clay, to get down it. So it's the type of thing where you build up to those type of dives, you build up to doing things like that. And even then, even with the experience that you have, even with the knowledge you have, you're fully aware that things can still go wrong. But the key is being able to stay calm in potentially stressful situations. So actually going down this sort of like clay chute, that was fine. That wasn't a problem. That went off without incident. It was tough. It was challenging. I mean, I literally had to physically force myself down through this restriction, literally plowing through the clay as I was going, pushing off the ceiling with my heels in zero visibility while running a line. And I sort of like popped out at the bottom end of it, and I was very, very careful about how I was running the line, where I was running the line, and making my tie-offs and everything else on the way down, because I was fully aware of the fact that I could easily line trap myself on my return if I wasn't really, really careful about the placement of the line and the placement of my body relative to the line and everything else. But as I sort of like got to the bottom of this restriction, which was actually fairly long as well, and made my tie-off, and actually finding tie-offs was fairly challenging, but super important to have the tie-off secure and in the right place as well. At that point, the cave opened back up, and I was able to, I sort of had to go down through this restriction. It opened up a little bit, decorated, which is typical of the caves in the Bahamas, which is these large rooms connected by these like deep, like almost like drains, which tend to be fairly restricted and very often do have these clay floors. So as I came into this large room, I'm looking around. I take the most obvious lead. I swim over through the room, over to the far side, drop down, carry on going, go through another restriction, and found a line that was actually coming from the other side, one of Brian's lines, and connected to that, and that's what made the connection. Turning around to go back, now I've got to go back up this clay chute that I've come down. Obviously, this area of the cave is in zero visibility for my passage through on the way in. But I have a clear mental picture of where I need to be, where I need to go, and everything else. So I'm holding the line in my right hand, and I'm moving carefully back up the slope. And it's slightly more challenging going up than it is going down. It's a little bit more difficult to push against the ceiling, and I felt like I was just sort of like a bar slope being sort of like squidged through, like along the floor. And as I'm going up, I realized I positioned myself slightly wrong, and I'm too far over to the side and I can't actually go further up. So then I tried to back up and it was impossible to back up. So I think to myself, okay, I have to move over over a little bit close to the line. I've got the line, I'm holding it in my right hand, I'm on the left-hand side of the line, and I've got my head turned to the left as well. And the mistake I made was I thought I have to go this way. So I turned my head to the right-hand side to look in the direction I wanted to go. And as I did that, I basically scooped my second stage through the clay. Because, I mean, the reason I had my head turned to the side is because I could only fit with my head turned to the side. And as I turned my head, I scooped the second stage through the clay, and the entire second stage completely filled up with clay, like an ice cream scoop. So I turned my head to the side, and I went to take a breath, and nothing happened. I'm like, great. So at that point, I managed to, my other hand is here, but I physically, because it's too small, I can't reach the second stage that I have on my backup second stage, not my backup, my other second stage that I have a necklace around my neck.
So okay? It's your left side. It's your left side regulator, or your right side?
Yeah, well, basically I've got two short hoses. Yeah, and they're both, one's on a necklace and one's clipped off to the necklace.
Yeah. Okay.
So while I'm going up this thing, I've got this one pulled to the side. So before I go in, I've already know that I'm like, I have to go up like this, and I have this one pulled to the side. As I went through, I scoop up the clay. Yeah, nothing's happened. I cannot use this hand to take this second stage because I can't physically get it underneath me. So I have to take my hand off the line. Remember, I'm in zero visibility at this point in time. But that's not really an issue because I'm at this point, I'm stuck. I can't go further forward. I can't go further back. I just turn my head to the side. Now I have nothing to breathe. But I know that I've got this second stage here. So I'm able to take my hand off the line. I get this second stage. I put it in my mouth. And as I do, it starts free flowing. And I put my hand back on the line. So now I'm stuck in zero visibility. I've got my hand on the line. One second stage is completely clogged and the other one is free flowing at this point. Not super bad, but it's like, great. Okay, so then I sort of like scooch over close to the line, and then I'm able to actually move up a little bit, but it's slow going. And as I'm going up, this one is now not only free flowing, but it's getting clogged with clay and it's starting to wet breathe as well. And I'm like, oh, shit, this is really just like, this is not much fun. But I know not too far in front of me, I have a stage ball. So, I mean, I'd actually found this restriction the day before. And at that point, I'd looked at it and thought, yeah, that looks pretty horrible. Let's see if I can find a way around it. And I'd looked for an alternative lead, which actually didn't pan out. So at that point, I knew, okay, I'm going to push that restriction. So I carried a stage bottle all the way to that restriction. I'd left it, just the other side of the restriction because I knew the chances were that I might be stuck in it for a long period of time, either going in or coming out. And so it would be nice, just as much else so that I have gas there should I need it. So it's slow going up this slope. I'm literally going like inch by inch. The breathing on the regulator I've got in my mouth is getting worse and worse. There's no way that I can at this point take it out, shake it out, clear it out or anything else. But I carry on going and I eventually make it up the slope and I get to the stage bottle. The regulator was still just working, but I mean really just working. I was getting more water than I was air with each breath. But again, I was comfortable because I practiced being in zero visibility a lot. I practiced dealing with a regulator that is really giving me lots of problems. One of the things I used to do during advanced side map classes was I had what was known as the regulator of death. And that was a regulator that free flowed, that wet breathed, that was like difficult to use. And so I was used to using that. So again, my comfort level in this situation, which is definitely extreme, stuck in zero visibility with one clog regulator and one malfunctioning regulator is not the best place to be. It's challenging, but I was able to maintain my mental faculties. I was calm. Everything, all the movements I was making were controlled. I already knew I'd made one mistake. So my mistake was basically turning my head to
Scooping,
the
yeah.
side and scooping up the clay. So at that point, I thought, yeah, that was dumb. You shouldn't have done that. You should have been thinking. And I thought, okay, you've made your mistake for the day. No more mistakes. So at this point, everything has to be absolutely on point. And even though I was dealing with some challenges, it was never hugely stressful for me. I was comfortable in the fact that, yeah, I can get up here. Eventually, this restriction is going to open up. I'm going to have a bit of space. I can address my regulator. And once I got up to the top of the slope, I was able to take the regulator out, shake it out, and there was some shit caught in the exhaust tee, and there was some stuff inside the exhaust as well. So once I cleared it, then it was breathing a lot better. It was still had a bit of clay in it. The other one I couldn't actually clear at all. It was just too jam-packed full of clay. But I knew, like 50 feet away, there's my stage bottle. So I just carried on going while I'm trying to get this one working again. Got to my stage bottle and switched to my stage at that point, because that was the easy solution. While I carried on as I'm swimming out, just working on the other regulator to get it back to a more functional state, which I was able to do. The other regulator I actually had to take back to Brian's shop and completely dismantle it, strip it down, and clear all this clay out. And it was literally like modeling clay. It was like someone had jam-packed my second stage with modeling clay. And, you know, it was just impossible to clear out effectively underwater in that situation. I just had to say, okay, that one's done. It's gone. I just have to deal with the situation and move on. So it was definitely, it was an interesting experience, but it was something that, to a certain extent, that I had planned for. I knew that this restriction could definitely cause me problems, which is why I had the stage bottle really close by, which is why I thought really carefully about line placement, tie-offs, and everything else, which is also why I thought about my positioning relative to line, how I was going to approach it, both on the way down, on the way back up again. The mistake I made it was literally turning my head to the side, which was a dumb thing for me to, in retrospect, it was a dumb thing to do. You know, it just was a natural or instinctive reaction. Oh, I'm going this way, I'll turn my head towards the direction I want to go in. So it also made me think afterwards about, okay, if I'm going to do that again, or be in that situation again, I always want to have my head turned to the side of my backup regulator. You know, so which regulator I breathe is going to depend on which way I want to have my head turned. And I always want to be facing my backup regulator. I don't ever want to be in a situation where my head is turned away from the regulator I may have to switch to if I'm in like such a small, tight restriction. So yeah, Brian actually, after I'd made the connection, Brian went and had a look at the restriction, just out of interest. I mean, he obviously went to see, he was able to verify the connection from the other side, and he went and had a look at the restriction and came back and he was just shaking his head and he went, no way, man. You're insane.
Yeah, exactly. No, amazing story. And there's so much in there in terms of, number one, you know, making the connection. Of course, that in itself is immense. And I've had